Hello and welcome. Today, my guest is Jen,
Hi.
who says that she can recall some past life memories. So that should be interesting to hear about. She's going to tell us about that. Thank you for joining me, Jen. How are you doing?
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good.
Absolutely.
And
So,
I'm a big show of your tarot channel as well. So
thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're doing this channel.
Yeah. I've been getting pushed in this direction for the past couple of years, and when you're kind of in tune and you can feel the universe pushing you. I'm real stubborn, so like I'm always like, no, I'm
Same
too
here.
good. And until I get that push that but anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, you can pretty much go ahead and start at whatever point is most relevant to the story and take it from there.
All right. So I will start with there's two memories that I had written to you about that are very distinct, and one of them is very positive, and this other one is not. To me, it's not very positive, even though the second memory is the one that has kind of really held a lot of guidance for me in a weird way, like helped me figure out karma in this life in a really weird way. So the first one is actually I've had since I was a child, and I told my mom about it when I was a kid, and she said that we should keep it between us. And which now that I think about it, I'm like, wow, like it's just weird that she would say something like that because it's a very positive memory. But um, I remember being in a place of mist. I guess it would have been heaven, but it was just mist. Like everybody and everything was just kind of floating, and things were all happening like simultaneously. Like there were groups of souls, I guess, that were like children. Everybody was like little children. And I remember my sister's energy being there with me, my older sister. This it's almost like she's always been a part of my life in some way. But I remember her jumping down into a pool, like she was with a group, and she got the permission to go ahead and go, and she just dove right in. And then I was standing in front of Jesus. I mean, I recognize him to be Jesus. I always have identified him with that energy. But he was smiling, and he asked me, "Are you sure you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure I want to go." And we didn't really communicate in words. It was more like as soon as he would think something, you would pick it up and understand it, like that type of thing. But just an energetic exchange, I guess. But as soon as I said yes, I wanted to go, he reached over to another pool off to the side, and he pushed away some of the mist, and he had me look down through the pool, and I could see a city, and it was Long Island, New York, which is where I ended up growing up for most of my childhood. But like I'll never forget that image of looking down and seeing the town and everything. So it was like I already was prepared for where I was going to live. So but that's always held a lot of positive feelings for me, is that we do make a choice to be here, and that no matter how my faith has been tested, like I don't identify as any particular religion. I grew up Christian and Roman Catholic, and I've had to recover from religious aspects of a religious upbringing that were really, I mean, I've gone through a lot of awakenings. So I'll get into the second memory now. I don't know if you have any questions about the first one, but that's pretty much the gist of it. But
Well, the
the
only thing
second one I've also had since I was a child. Go ahead.
I was going to say, the only thing that I'm kind of thinking is maybe that sounds more like a pre-birth memory from what I've heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's all I was wondering. I didn't mean
yeah.
to interrupt you.
It's yeah. Oh no, that one definitely would be, I guess, a pre-birth memory. And then the second one is the actual past life memory that I've also had since I was a child. And I used to think about it quite a bit. I would sit and kind of like, how you just kind of go into the void and just kind of like stare off and just,
Yeah.
some like I was always baffled by it. I never told anybody because I always thought like it's weird that I would feel myself as this person even though it's not me. Like it always just kind of messed with my head that this whole scene played out and I was there for it, but I was like, how can this be when I'm a kid? Like it was too complex for me as a child. And the weird thing about it is that I actually suppressed that for a very long time. I hadn't thought about it in probably 25 years. And then here just a few months ago, I was at work and I was just getting started at work and I couldn't tell you what triggered it, but all of a sudden it just came flooding back like full force. Like all of a sudden the whole thing was there again. And I was like, I mean, I just had to stop what I was doing and just like literally sit there and like take a moment because I was like, oh my God, like here's this memory again. I haven't even thought about this in so many years. And the whole thing is playing out through my mind. So that one is I'm a woman in my late 20s, early 30s, and I have a daughter who's between 3 and 4 years of age. I know that much. I'm pretty sure I was married and that I did not have to work. Like these are the impressions that I got that have always just kind of accompanied this memory is that of myself. Just very few things, but I remember my bathroom, which is really weird. I had all this really tacky gold plated crap in my bathroom, which I guess is from like the late 70s or mid 70s or whatever is like the time period that I would associate it with. I remember my bathroom, and then I remember we went somewhere. I took my daughter. I'm pretty sure I left my husband. Like I'm pretty sure it was for whatever reason I left my husband with my daughter and we went to this place that was like a church. I don't know if it was in a basement or just some type of church, but it had these huge like pillars everywhere. So that always told me I always got the church vibe from it. And there was a blue shag carpeting in some area of the building. I remember that blue shag carpeting, like I can look right at it. It's so we get there and I remember that it was around the holidays and we talked to a man in a gray suit for a couple minutes. It was just somebody who I was acquainted with, and there was a whole bunch of people around, and everybody was kind of like hyped up about something. And we talked to him, and then he went and got us a drink in a little plastic cup. It was like some type of a drink, and then he gave us a drink, and then the next thing I know, everybody falls on the floor. Like everybody was on the floor, and we were laying there just staring for like an indefinite period of time and everything kind of started to turn gray and I just remember laying there and just wondering why nobody was getting up and like I that's all I remember towards the end of it was just for the longest time everything just turning slowly to gray and then that's it. That's the whole thing. So um so now that I had remembered this like as an adult, I was like, okay, what is this all about? Like, is there any way I could find out like what is this all about? So I started researching certain details like churches with pillars, and I was like, that's dumb because there's like 500 million churches with pillars, and just to try to find something that is like relative to this. And so I was like just kind of typing in all the details, on Google that I could remember. Just image wise. And I thought, okay, well, nothing visually is really going to bring anything up from that. So I decided to type in, okay, would there have been like a mass death in a church? And so I typed that in, and the only result that came up was the Jonestown massacre. And I was like, my heart literally like sank into my stomach because I was like, no, like, no, that can't, no, like, but I kind of like looked into it a little more and I'm like, if that is the case, that would actually make a lot of sense for my lifetime now in a weird way. I know it sounds really, really weird, but
No, not at all.
that just
No, that's not
that
weird.
just is I don't know. It's odd to me still. Like I still find it disturbing because I never even looked into that story. Like I was always creeped out by it, so I never like looked into it. But I guess it was like a cult following, and um,
Hmm.
yeah, everybody kind of drank the Kool-Aid, and it's really tragic actually. But it's weird to me because of the fact that the way that I grew up was like very strictly religious and like not allowed to listen to certain things, not allowed to do certain things. And it's like my whole life I've had to kind of break away and wake up from a lot of those types of oppression, like in different forms. So it, in a weird way, like if that is the case, if that was a part of my past life, because the timeline and stuff like that, the details that were there, I'm like, those things would all fit with the late 70s. And I guess the date of that was like 1979 around Thanksgiving. And I was born in 1980. So
Hmm.
I kind of forgot to tell you that earlier, but so it's just weird. But
Well, I don't really think it's weird
I
because
guess like in a weird way, it just,
can you hear me? I was going to say
yeah,
I don't really think that it's weird because I've been experiencing something very similar where and it happened. See, I'm 34. I turned 35 in February, and right as soon as I turned 30, I started having these strange memories that I had when I was a kid that I pushed away after I was about 10 years old. They're not that detailed. They're so complex and hard for me to put into words that I can't even, like you just said, and you told your story like detailed. I wish I could do that because I just get little glimpses of being somewhere that feels so familiar that I've never seen before. And I'm a
yeah,
person that's not me. And like
right.
something will stop me in my tracks. And when you said something about peering into the void, it'll stop me in my tracks and I'll just zone into the void
Hmm.
and remember. But I've been
Yep.
experiencing that for the past 4 years or so. I can't piece it together and explain it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, for me it's just like I said, it's just that one memory, but it is so it's that whole scene playing out. And yeah, I don't, but it's that feeling of like I know this place, I know these people, and I know this, it's really weird. Yeah, it's very hard to put into words. And it's odd that you would say that you had this suppression of it for a long time too, because that's what I mean. I don't know if it's like a maturity thing, or like I said, I have no idea what triggered it. I was just literally starting work one night and it just flooded my mind, like just literally I was right there again. So I don't know. It's trippy to me, but
From a lot of the research that I've been doing, they do say that now, especially definitely for the past 2.5 years or so, we've been the vibration of the planet has been raising, and everybody's reacting to it. Everybody, this just that everybody's reacting to it differently. Those of us who are at a certain vibration, to go along with it, we're awakening, having past life memories, awakening to our powers, awakening to, and the people who are still asleep, who are clinging to the 3D game, it's making them go crazy. So that's where you can see like this big divide
yeah,
between people right now, where there's some people like it's almost split right down the middle, where some people are like awake
right.
and remembering, and then the other half of the population is just going bonkers, going insane.
Yeah. It's sad too because it's like some people they just clearly don't understand what's happening or just won't even give those aspects, spiritual aspects, really a chance to, I mean, I can see how it would drive a person crazy because of the way that I've had to awaken in my life. If I didn't know that something spiritual was happening, I would think it was psychological for sure, like I mean, because and growing up in the church and stuff like that, like being indoctrinated for a long time, that does a number on you psychologically because when you have to suddenly break away from that, like you have to question everything and everything gets dismantled. So I could see how it could become like a psychological issue for people if they don't accept it as a spiritual along with a physical reality, And that's why I feel like, okay, I was given that first pre-birth memory, obviously to help me, to help other people, because, you've got to have that understanding, you know, I mean, because I feel like whatever happened in my past life, if I drank some Kool-Aid and also gave some Kool-Aid to my child, if I allowed that to happen, then it would make sense to me that I might want to come back and correct some things, but it would take a real battle to get through that. But I would have to have some sort of a clue that that what I was doing was on the right track, I guess, like that's kind of how I look at it, is like, I have to take the bad with the good. I would love to think of, you know, my spirituality is just always being positive and good, but that's not always the case. I mean, I've had a lot of battles, that have come along with that, that it's like that internal voice that tells you like, yes, this is for you. This battle is actually for you. Like you're facing this entity or this whatever, this is actually for you. And the only way to get through this is you have to face it and you have to look at it and you have to see how ugly it is and then realize, oh, you know what? I'm better than this thing, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um,
I did
like
have a
I've had
couple.
experiences with sleep paralysis for a long time.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
No, go ahead, because that's one of the things that I've been
Okay.
looking for talking about. So go ahead with that, and then I'll ask a couple questions.
Oh, okay. Interesting. All right. So since I guess 20, or let's see, it would have been 2005. No, 2007 was the first time I had a sleep paralysis experience, but that one was just like a more of a feeling of something happening. Um, but it was like I had literally just laid down to go to sleep, and I heard the radio come on in the other part of the house all of a sudden after everything was shut off. And it was like, why is there a radio playing? And it was like I couldn't move to get up and go shut off the radio, but I could hear this radio playing like on AM, and it was really annoying. And I was like it was just super irritating, but I couldn't move my body a muscle to even get up to go shut it off. So I'm just laying there listening to this irritating radio. And then I had the sensation of somebody coming in the house, and again, I couldn't move, couldn't look, turn around even to look towards the door. But it was like I could see, like in my mind's eye, all these things happening, like somebody coming in the house and then coming towards the bedroom, and they had a knife and they were behind me. And as soon as they raised the knife, it was like I started to try to scream and I couldn't scream, nothing came out. And then it was like over with. And I was like, I mean, I jumped out of bed and I was like sweating and shaking and just like, what the, like that was the first experience with that. And then over the years, as I kind of started to recognize that as like a dark energy, like I never forgot that. I was like, whatever that was, whether it came from me or whether it was sent to me or whatever it was, I have to remember that energy. Like I have to remember that that is something that's coming to attack me. And so it didn't happen again until 2013. And then, no, I guess it was later than that. I was having like nightmares and stuff starting in 2013, because that was like another awakening period of time, 2012, 2013. Um, really odd stuff just started happening in the world and like just being a part of it. Um, it was 2016 because I was working. I remember I always go off of where I was working at the time, but so I had started to study the Bible again just independently because I hadn't read it in a very long time. And what I was taught about it was always through somebody else. And I thought, I've never actually like read this for myself or studied it for myself. Like, I read it and stuff, but I never actually got in depth and studied it. And so I had decided in that year to go ahead and start doing that. And it was like as soon as I started doing that, then it awakened all types of dark energy around me. It was like it's really weird, but it was just like, the more I was able to get out of it, like the harder the attacks would come. And so then it came in the form of sleep paralysis. So it would be the same thing. I'd lay down to go to sleep, and as soon as I shut my eyes, I could feel this presence like in my face, like where I couldn't move a muscle. It would just all of a sudden it was like there was a frequency change or something, but all of a sudden I can feel this thing in my face and starting to put its hand over my mouth, like stop talking about what you're reading, like stop talking about spirituality. Like it would try to literally put its hand over my mouth. And the only thing that actually stopped it was for me to get the courage and the strength to say the name of Jesus. And I was like, okay, that actually does work, I guess. Like if I say Jesus, they have to stop for whatever reason. I don't know why. I'm not, you know, trying to promote any type of religion, but I'll tell you, if you say the name of Jesus, they stop. It does work. So that happened, and then a couple months later, the same thing happened again where I laid down to go to sleep, and it was like that same energy got in my face again and tried to put its hand over my mouth again. And I said, in the name of Jesus, you take your hand off my mouth, and it stopped. So a few months later, I thought that was going to be the last of it. I was like, these things, whatever this is, they got to know, like, I'm not playing with this. Whatever this is, I'm aware of it, and I don't like it. I like to get sleep at night. So the next time it happened, I actually heard like a frequency change. Same thing, lay down to go to sleep. And the second I close my eyes, I hear this, like, I've been kind of tuning into that a little bit more lately too. Is just like when I start to hear that frequency change, it kind of gives me a clue that something may be coming up. Um, so I hear this frequency change, and all of a sudden I get this visual image in front of me of this desert, and it's just like the most dry, cracked looking, like old piece of land. I mean, it just looked like a wasteland, like Mars or something. And I'm staring into it, and I'm looking at it, and then all of a sudden it's like it started to like I started to zoom out from it. And when I started to zoom out from it, I noticed I wasn't looking at a desert. I was looking at a face, and it was like the face was backing away from me, and it was like it looked like an alien.
Hmm.
It looked like some kind of creepy alien, but it was like I had been looking into his skin the whole time, and he kept backing away, and he was literally right in front of me, and he was trying to like tap into my mind, like I don't know, my third eye or something. He was trying to get permission to enter my body. And I was like, no, you're not entering my body. And he kept persisting, like mentally, like telepathically persisting, like, yes, I'm going to look at things from the inside of you. And I said, no, you're not. And then he got mad, and he said, like telepathically, he said, okay, fine, but I'm watching you, and this is how I'm watching you. And he showed me this panel of screens, and I was like, well, okay, like this thing is watching me. Like, why? Why are you watching me? But it ticked me off because I was like, I'm minding my own business here. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm studying the Bible. I'm getting to know things, and I'm really actually finding a different appreciation for stuff that I was really scared of as a kid and stuff. And now here's this thing attacking me because I'm doing this. It was like, stop talking, stop, we're gonna, so I honestly don't know what that was. I guess it was some kind of an entity. I really don't know, but I equate it to like a demonic type of entity or just some lower entity. I really don't know. Um, so then that was back in 2016, and I hadn't had a single experience with it until earlier this year. Um, we were laying in bed, and I have a baby now. I have a 20-month-old baby, and he was in the crib next to the bed, and I lay down to go to sleep. And as no sooner than I close my eyes than I hear that frequency change. And it was like I knew. It was like all of a sudden my awareness kicked in, and I could see this little like scraggly black energy ball thing like scramble in through the door like really quick. And he came right over to the bed, and he had like silenced my partner who was laying next to me, like literally put his hand on his throat. And I heard my partner go, ugh, like he gasped. And I was like, I knew he was coming for me. He came to put his hand over my mouth again, and I started to talk, just say anything I could. And I sat up and I said, leave now. And he was gone. And my partner told me next day, he's like, I remember you saying leave now. And I told him what happened. And I was like, yeah, this thing showed up, and I had to tell it to leave. Like, so I'm like, whatever it is, like if it's being sent to me, I don't know. I pretty much just pray and just like thank God, like thank you for protecting us. I just pray for protection, stuff like that. It's nothing fancy, but it's just that's really all you got to do. But to me, it's always been like challenging my awareness, like challenging my like in a very deep spiritual level is like mentally, spiritually, like it's like God teaches me in a way where he's like, you have to, it's like being a soldier. It's like you have to be awake and aware even when you're asleep, kind of like, because these things don't sleep, whatever it is. they're not sleeping, and you have to kind of be able to be trained in that awareness, I guess, to be able to battle certain things. Like, so yeah,
Yeah,
that's
'cause
the sleep
I've had a
paralysis
couple of
part of
experiences
it.
with something like that recently. Twice this year, I experienced sleep paralysis, but it wasn't like what most people like. You're like what you said, that like is from the textbook of what most people experience, like an entity coming in or something
Yeah,
like that. For me, both
right.
times I would hear a really loud ringing noise, and then it felt like I just grabbed a power line and like I was being electrocuted.
Oh,
And like literally it feels like
wow.
electricity is surging through my body and I'm trying to scream and I can't scream. And I'm looking and I can move my
That's
eyes
scary.
and
Wow.
yeah, yeah. It's happened to me twice. As a matter of fact, the last time it was about a month ago. And I have no idea.
Dang.
Yeah, yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's way more like,
I don't know. I've
wow.
heard some people say that maybe I was having an out of body experience. I've heard somebody say that sounds like your soul was trying to separate from your body. I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. If that, I've heard people talk about astral travel and they say that it's very pleasant and very natural. And whatever this was did not feel pleasant or natural. It felt like I was being attacked,
That
you
doesn't sound like it.
know?
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. So
No.
anyway,
See,
I
if that was, then I mean, I don't have the answers to that because I've never experienced the astral travel. I like to stay in my body. I'm one of those people. I'm like I've had dreams. I used to have dreams of flying and going different places, and it was like I was aware in those dreams. And I'll tell you, the first time I had a flying dream, I actually got tangled in power lines. So,
oh,
but it it didn't zap me, but it was interesting because I was like, oh yeah, of course you're a klutz when you're awake, so you would be a klutz when you're, trying to
yeah.
fly in your dreams. But it's one of those things where you learn how to like kind of leap off the ground. It's like, so somewhere in me, it's like I know how to do that, but it's not, I don't consider it astral traveling really. Like I don't, I mean, I'm not sure if it is or not, but I've never actually tried to do lucid dreaming or astral traveling or projecting, or I just, that it never, just never felt right to me. Like I like to feel like I'm still in my body, I guess. Like, sure, I like to see stuff, but I'm one of those people. I don't like the thought of leaving my body because I'm not experienced enough with that to where I would know how to come back, or if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions about the memories. So, are the two memories that you shared, are they interlinked? So it was like the negative experience happened and then you died and then you remember being in the mist and then planning your incarnation here? Do they both go together or were they like, did they come to you separately?
they came to me separately, but I mean, I'm just speculating, but I feel like that it would make sense that the pre-birth memory would be me agreeing to go ahead and come back and fix some things. Like, I mean, I guess, like, because I feel like our spirit body is always in that childlike state, like always in that, we're always learning, so therefore we're not very advanced. But I mean, when we come here, I feel like um you had a guest on, I think it was your first episode of this podcast, but I was listening to what she was saying, and I it's very similar to the way that I believe things are, is that like we're continually learning when we come here, and the only way for like God to experience, or the all, or whatever you want to call it, to experience, would be you would have to have your memory wiped in order to come here. So if little fragments are left behind, then it's for a reason, or it could be helpful, or I mean, who knows. But I feel like the reason I came here this time was definitely on purpose, because like I said, I've always known I've had a very like strong purpose in my life, but not a lot of it really made sense spiritually until I went ahead and did the research on that past life memories, because I was like, okay, Um, I'm thankful for remembering like being that close to God. Like I'm really thankful for remembering that energy. Like it left an imprint on me for my whole life. And then the other memory is like maybe I suppressed it because it was so disturbing and I wasn't really ready until now to actually like face it and deal with it. And it's like, okay, in order for you to resolve that, it goes kind of hand in hand with some karma in this lifetime. You know, there's been things that have happened. It's like I said, spiritually, it's like I've always been. It's like this energy always seeks me out to oppress me in some way. Like the places I work, if I try to go to church, if I try to do certain things, it's like that energy always finds me, and I'm always meant to confront this certain energy, which is like oppressive. I mean, that's the only way I could describe it, but I guess it's necessary for this day and age that we're supposed to be waking up from these types of oppression. We're supposed to be, um, accepting more of, all books. Like when I say I studied the Bible, it's like I didn't just limit it to the 66 books. Like there's a lot of other writings that were left out that I was like, let's read the Bible, but let's also start with these, like the book of Enoch and the wisdom of Solomon and the story of the book of Adam and Eve and what was actually written about the stuff that's so not, you know, okay for the common person to be reading about. And it's like there's a lot of different information there about, alien encounters and stuff that we are all kind of experiencing now that I'm like, this is really relevant now. There's no way this stuff should be left out. Like, each person should be able to make their own judgments of it, whether it's relevant to them or not. And it's like the fact that stuff like that gets kept from us, it's like kept in, I don't know, the who is it, the Catholic Church and or whatever stuff like that. I guess they keep a lot of information under wraps, but there are channels on YouTube that I found where people are putting all that information together. There's a guy named Robert Farrell who does the Super Gospel, and he goes through all the books that have been found, like all the writings, all the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he reads them all out loud and to record them, and so that people can listen. And that's how I was doing it, was listening to an audiobook at first, and then going through and just like, using um, keywords and really looking at the parabolic aspect of all the writings is that like it interprets itself. You don't need an interpreter for it. Like it will interpret itself if you understand like keywords. Like um, keywords are always in the same, context and things like that, where it's like, there really aren't mistakes in these writings. It's more of can you accept that, these messages are consistent? Like even when they're contradictory, they're still pretty consistent when you have the other books and you look at the missing information. It's like, I mean, I don't know. But I've gotten a lot of crap for that from like family and, mainly my mom. Like, um, she never wanted me to like, that's the devil and don't do this to yourself. And like, I started studying tarot, and then that was, forbidden and stuff like that. And it's like, why is this stuff like not okay? It's a deck of freaking cards. Like, why is this, if I'm going to put all my faith in a deck of cards, then maybe I have some serious problems. But if I'm studying for my own intuition, like if I'm trying to learn myself, then I don't see why any God would have a problem with that. And if he does, then he's not the real God, like he couldn't have created me, because why would I have such a curiosity in me to want to study things and um I don't know. I end up questioning a lot, and I've had people in the church tell me like you're rebellious, and stuff like that. And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you feel yourself being judged, but it's like we don't judge. And it's like, but you totally just judged me. And like that stayed with me for a long time, and I was afraid for a long time to even like go there with my own mind. And like now I'm like, no, the questions have become too strong and they need answering. And you know, if I have to study something for a few months and then move on to another subject, I've become okay with that. Like I've had to accept a lot and just let a lot of stuff die, because it's like old stuff that like, why do we need, what good is this if it's not actually able to open a person up. Like if it's not you know, understanding is like the skeleton key, you know, it's like just to have that understanding that, you know, things are allowed on this planet for a reason, you know. Um, that's kind of the way I approach it is like, you know what, if God allows it, then I have to accept it, you know, and I have to see the wisdom in whatever it is that unfolds. Like, no matter how ugly it is, no matter how horrendous, I have to understand that this is part of God's experience as well. And I'm lucky enough to be here, to be a part of this experience. And you know, I wouldn't trade it for anything, even with all the suffering and all the fights and all the battling that I've had to do. Is just like I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love my life, you know, and I
Mm.
love, you know, the things that I've gone through because every single one of them is like it really has made me stronger. So
Yeah, that's a big
yeah,
part of how they built the third dimension. This is the way that I look at it, you know, because that I call it the 3D game. You can call it whatever you want, but back when they had all of mankind in the deepest spiritual amnesia they could possibly get us in, and they had to
right,
remove anything that would even hint to us that we're more powerful than that, so that we,
right,
yeah, so
yeah,
we could be in complete and total amnesia, and we think that we're just these powerless victims, and we're easy to control that way. And now, you know, there's still a lot of people
right,
trying to cling to that because, you know, and
right,
we're awakening out of that. So that's what this whole period in time is all about. I did have another quick question though.
absolutely,
Um, with
sure.
the first memory, the pre-birth memory, you said that you remembered being surrounded by a bunch of souls or beings. Do you remember what that looked like? Was it something you could see visually? Like, did they look like people, like bodies, or were they just like little energy balls?
They were like, it was just mist. Everything was mist. Like everybody was made of mist. So it's like the only face that I could see clearly would have been Jesus who's standing right in front of me. But it was like an impression of his smile, if that makes any sense. And in the background, I saw a whole row of, I don't want to say they were men, but they were like these old beings, but they were all standing next to each other like pillars, and they were like all talking to each other at the same time. It was like they just kept going back and forth, and like they were making these major decisions. Like I don't know who they were, but they have to be relevant. I'm sure they were relevant. They were way beyond what these other littler souls were. Like the ones jumping into the pool, like they were no longer going to be jumping into the pool, kind of a thing. They were there making these major decisions, like I mean way beyond what I could comprehend. But they had a very serious energy to them, so that but they were tall and they were big, and they, I guess they looked like men, but they were like, it's hard to explain, like,
That's okay.
but the littler energies were like misty at the bottom, but you could see like a form, almost like a ghost, I guess you would say. It was almost like just looking at ghosts, you know, but it was thick, like it was a thick mist. It wasn't like a see-through ghost. It was like everybody was so full of vibrancy and just like happy to be there. And it was just like you just knew what was going on with everybody. You didn't have to, it was like being a third grader, but like knowing everything. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like,
That's cool.
but just that presence in front of me, I'll never forget that as long as I live. I was so small compared to him. Like he was standing in front of me, I literally was putting my face into his robes, like down by his knees, probably just like a little kid. I was standing about that height to him, and I remember him just looking down and just being like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "I'm sure," you know. And then he was like, "Okay." And he just waved some mist away from the pool and showed me showed me the world below. I was so excited to do it. I just remember that feeling of being so excited. And I remember my sister's energy being there and jumping in before me. And she's 2 years older than me. And I actually told her about this experience just like earlier this month. I'd never told her before, but I was like, yeah, I know you've always been with me. Like I know that you and I have always been paired up for whatever reason to help each other through these lives, and we have, you know, like yeah, we've had our differences for sure, but even that has been a great learning experience. Just, I don't know. Like, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe, but
Oh, that's fine. I just always try because of all the research that I've done for, however many years, everybody says that it's hard to explain. So I've always wanted to
yeah,
try to either figure out how or to help people try to figure out an easier way to explain it. Hopefully that'll, spark and trigger some other people's memories. I did have one other question real quick.
yeah,
When you say jump into the
sure,
pool, when you say jump into the pool, does that mean when you jump into the pool, you incarnate?
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's cool. That's
That
interesting.
that
Well,
means you're going down a birth canal,
yeah, I did have one
I
last
guess.
question though before we wrap it up. How, if you could give like
Okay.
a description of exactly how your life has changed since you started remembering all this.
Well, um, I would say, I mean, it's changed in so many ways. Like I kind of described like what's happened in the last couple months since I've had that flashback or whatever you want to call it, that other memory. Um, I would say that I've even though I've always taken my spirituality very seriously, like it's really helped me to understand karma, or just like how karma works, like based on that personal experience. For me is like I always kind of, you can think of it a certain way, you hear people say it a lot and stuff, but it doesn't really make sense unless you understand like what exactly needs to be atoned for, or what needs to be repaired. It's not so much about the appearance of one's life as it is about like the engine performance. From this point on, is like internally you have to go through this process of change, um, to understand yourself. And I think that's like the main thing. I don't think it's any big grand other thing than just the understanding of oneself is like, um, we can't change our nature automatically. Like we're inclined to do certain things and we are on a path. I definitely believe that like you're meant to do certain things, and whether you choose not to do those things that are pertinent to you know, that goal, like you're still going to ultimately get there. Even if you take the long way around, you're still going to be faced with those same energies that are going to challenge you to make that change. So I guess I'd say my life has changed. In some ways I'm a little bit more at ease about what I've gone through in this life as compared to like, the impressions from that memory is like, okay, that would make sense that of why you would have to fight these types of energies, and why it's necessary for you to do that is because that type of oppression or that cult mentality it's got to go like from this planet. Like it's not helpful, it's not useful for anything. And that's something I think is that I stick to, is like, okay, is it useful, is it helpful, like a way of thinking, like how useful is this way of thinking? And I kind of use that as my measuring stick, is like, okay, you know um yeah, everybody, do what I say, and I'm going to lead you, and I'm going to manipulate, these words to get people. It's like that's not useful for anybody. How is that useful? Like,
All right.
so I guess I would just say like it's kind of solidified certain lessons in my life, and help make sense of certain experiences as lessons instead of just random occurrences. It's like this is all related to me. It's all related to each other, and it's all to make me stronger, and it's to ingrain and to, instead of indoctrination, it's more like, okay, let's imbue your spirit with these lessons so that next time you're going to know, you're going to recognize that energy right off the bat, and you're going to know how to deal with it in a polite way or whatever, or in a wise way, instead of being afraid of it so that you just succumb to it, or you just go along with it. It's about not being blind. It's about like regaining your sight. Like I would definitely say I've regained my sight through all of this. So I'm just grateful for that.
Awesome. Well, I do greatly appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience. If you ever happen to awaken to any other memories that maybe you didn't have before, you can definitely let me know. But I am going to go ahead and
Okay.
wrap this up. I hope you have a good night, and thank you again for joining me.
You too, Rich. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. You have a good day. Bye-bye.